Previously on Solo Leveling Ragnarok, a massive breakout at Jisen Correctional Facility had thrown the entire Hunter Association into a spiral, with everyone scrambling to contain the unfolding chaos. Yet thanks to Suho's immediate arrival and decisive action on the scene, the rampage was swiftly neutralized and the perpetrators behind it were reduced to dust. With both Dongsuk and Taishik terminated and silence gradually returning to the city, Suho moved on to his next task. He issued a command, watching as shadows peeled away from the corpses of the two fighters, twisting and coiling until they assumed form, becoming not new additions to his growing legion. But Suho didn't stop there. Pushing further, he invoked shadow creation, forcing the shadows of Dongsuk and Taishik to condense and reshape themselves into something sturdier, something crystallized with purpose. His expression stayed cold as he inspected the transformation, and soon the truth became evident. The shadows had solidified into two items, one a rare-grade armor, the other a hero-grade ring, the very first Suho had ever crafted. Its effect granted camouflage, allowing the user to conceal their physical form while erasing every trace of presence. A new system window cascaded into his vision, prompting him to assign a name to the ring. Momentarily stunned by the unexpected notification, Suho paused before settling on a name that fit its lethal nature, Kira. The system accepted the designation instantly. A bright glow flared around the ring as more windows materialized, confirming that a manual had been generated. With that, the item gained the potential to level, and like all named creations, it would bind permanently to its first wearer. As Suho examined the stats of the ring, now glowing ominously on his hand, a faint smile touched his lips. From this moment onward, every attribute the ring possessed in its shadow form would now feed directly into him. His eyes gleamed with quiet ambition, and a single thought surfaced. If he could forge items of even higher grade, his growth would accelerate exponentially, fast enough to bring him closer to the one goal that mattered most, standing beside his father sooner. But before the thought could settle, somewhere else in the city, a massive white-hot claw tore through ranks of his shadow soldiers with terrifying ease. Back where Suho stood, his expression tightened. One by one, the connections to his summons snapped, dissolving in rapid succession. His eyes widened slightly as he understood what that meant. Something powerful was carving its way toward him. His instincts were proven right when a thunderous explosion ripped through the area. A gaping hole burst open in the building ahead, blown apart by the impact of a shadow soldier hurled clean through the wall. Dust and smoke surged outward, choking the air as debris rained down. Suho shielded himself from the falling stone, but the Ant King wasn't as alert, and a chunk of rubble struck him squarely on the head. As the smoke thinned, a figure stepped through the breach and landed amid the swirling haze. Baek Yunho of the White Tiger Guild emerged in his full tiger-like humanoid transformation. Suho's mind immediately ran through possibilities, but before he could speak, Baek's nostrils flared at the scent of blood still clinging to Suho's clothes, prompting a sharp demand for his identity. The young hunter met the S-ranker's glare with unbroken composure, introducing himself plainly and stating he was here to rescue civilians, insisting the accusations from the Hunter Association were false. Baek burst into laughter at the boldness of a wanted man, proudly declaring himself in the open, but the amusement vanished in an instant. His voice hardened as he stepped in, clawed finger lifted toward Suho, questioning what proof he could possibly offer if he truly claimed innocence. Suho brushed his hand aside with calm finality and, in a tone that left no room for frivolity, stated there was no time for proof and that they would settle the matter later. They still had citizens to save. The unexpected firmness gave Baek pause. Suho's words cut through him like steel, reminding him that a hunter's duty was to save people first. The conviction behind those words triggered something buried deep within Baek's memory. He was suddenly back in his firefighting days, standing beside a man whose voice rang clear in the recollection, urging that in times of crisis, one must make the necessary choice first, and only afterward find a way to make that choice the right one. As the memory dissolved and the present returned, recognition sparked across Beck's face, softening his features with sudden warmth. He reached forward and gripped Suho's shoulders, delight breaking through as his beastly form melted away. It finally clicked. Suho was the grandson of his old captain, Sung Il-hwan, the man who had boasted endlessly about the boy. That realization braided memory and duty into something lighter than the destruction around them, and without another dispute, the two moved out as one, ripping through waves of escaped inmates with ruthless precision. Side by side, their auras surged, flooding the streets with crushing pressure. Together, they carved through entire blocks of resistance in minutes. Soon, their momentum eased, and Beck broke the intensity with an unexpected question, casually asking if Suho had a girlfriend. The young hunter, caught off guard, hesitated before admitting he didn't. Beck's grin turned mischievous as he teased him about meeting his daughter, noting she also happened to be single and hinting at deeper ties between their families. Before Suho could form a response, the rhythmic thrum of rotors pulled their attention upward. Helicopters descended from above, the Hunter Association arriving at last to extract civilians. Peering down from one of the helicopters, Jinchul surveyed the evacuated civilians and offered Miho a quiet nod of thanks for shepherding them to safety. A sigh of relief softened his features, though it vanished quickly as his eyes narrowed at the sight of black figures drifting across the streets below. His tone dipped into suspicion as he questioned Miho about them, only for her to shake her head, just as unsure. Hearing their exchange, Taegyu, seated nearby, rose abruptly and proposed eliminating the mysterious figures wandering the ruined streets. Jinchul barely had time to warn him before Taegyu leapt from the hovering craft, plummeting toward the ground with closed eyes and a grim expression, as though savoring the stillness before release. When he opened his eyes again, deadly clarity gleamed within them. His skill unfurled over the city in an instant as faint red crosshairs appeared across rooftops, alleyways, and shattered roads, each marking a shadow summon as if 100 invisible scopes had locked onto their targets at once. The bow in Taegyu's hands vibrated with tension. In a single fluid motion, he drew the string back until it nearly snapped, then released. What followed was a storm of arrows splitting through the sky, bending unnaturally mid-flight as they hunted down the shadow constructs with merciless precision. One by one, the black forms were skewered and burst into flashes of dispersing light. On the ground, Suho and Beck felt the devastation rippling overhead. Beck's smirk widened at the realization that reinforcements had arrived, and Suho felt a brief wave of relief, certain that villains would no longer be allowed to run wild. But that moment shattered instantly when Taegyu, still hovering above, caught sight of Suho. Calm precision twisted into something venomous, and hatred sharpened his gaze. Hatred born from Minsung's death. In Taegyu's mind, the A-rank hunter would still be alive if not for Suho. Fueled by that grief, he drew another arrow with trembling fury and fired without hesitation. The arrow streaked toward Suho with blinding speed, carving a line of wind through the air. Suho's arms rose instinctively to block, but before impact, Beck surged forward, snatching the projectile in mid-flight and refusing to let it reach the young hunter. Seeing his attempt fail, Taegyu descended with explosive force, closing the distance in a blur until he stood before Beck. His voice thundered as he demanded to know why Beck stood beside a wanted criminal. The S-rank hunter attempted to diffuse the tension, trying to vouch for Suho's actions and the lives he had saved, but his words barely formed before another arrow ripped past, grazing his cheek and jolting him into silence. Taegyu's voice followed, sharper and more unhinged, demanding clarity about Beck's relationship with Suho as bloodlust radiated from his eyes. Sensing the depth of Taegyu's fury, Beck understood that words alone would do nothing, so he shed the last of his restraint, unleashing his full beastly transformation and planting himself firmly against Taegyu, prepared to restrain him if he had to. As the two S-ranks faced off, their auras collided like opposing storms. Pressure rolled out from them so fiercely that Suho stood frozen, chest tightening under the suffocating air as power crackled through the ruined street. But before the tension could snap, flames erupted around them, a blazing ring sealing all three hunters inside. From the inferno stepped Jong-in, flanked by Jinchul, Miho, and Dojin. Jong-in's voice cracked like a whip as he ordered them to cease immediately, demanding to know why they were fighting each other in a moment of crisis. Seeing the higher-ups, Beck exhaled in relief, believing he could finally explain himself. He spoke earnestly, vouching for Suho and revealing his debt to the young hunter's grandfather. Yet the response was not what he expected. Miho, his own daughter, and Jong-in both scorned the reasoning, rejecting the idea of protecting an alleged fugitive who had ignored a summons from the association. To them, there was no justification for sparing someone who had already betrayed their trust. With the group's stance leaning toward containment, Taegyu's anger hardened further. He warned Beck that if sentiment made him continue defending a criminal, he would be the first to fall. Before the situation could turn explosive again, Jinchul stepped forward, bringing the weight of his authority down on everyone. He urged them all to hear from the man at the center of it and turned to Suho, demanding proof of his innocence. The question hung heavy in the scorched air, a final judgment waiting. Suho, hesitant but ready to defend himself, opened his mouth to speak, only to be abruptly cut off by Jong-in, whose sharp words sliced the moment. Such explanations had no place here, he insisted, before laying out the full list of charges. Suho's history of fleeing, his fake hunter registration, his presence at Stardust-related raids, and finally his involvement in Minsung's death. With all of that, Jong-in argued, there was nothing left to defend. Taegyu seized on those words, snapping for immediate detention, convinced the circumstantial evidence alone warranted Suho's arrest. Yet despite the logic, despite the breach of trust, Jinchul's thoughts split from the rest. He knew arrest made sense. He knew public backlash would be merciless, but even so, he couldn't bring himself to punish Suho. And in that moment, he chose to stand with him, even if it meant losing every shred of trust the association had left. Before another objection could rise, Suho's voice cut through the tense air, heavy with resolve, and shadows immediately coiled around him, tightening every hunter's stance. The atmosphere thickened as his eyes narrowed with single-minded certainty, and he declared that he would prove his innocence, even if the method required of him was extreme. Jinchul's expression snapped into alarm, and he moved as though to caution Suho, but the warning came too late. Taegyu's fury, already stretched to its limit, erupted. Believing Suho intended to escape yet again, the S-rank acted without hesitation. His arm moved in one smooth, practiced arc, and an arrow streaked forward with blistering speed, burying itself deep into Suho's shoulder. Pain exploded through Suho's torso, but he stood firm. Even as blood dripped down his arm, shadows surged beneath his feet, twisting into the form of a key that launched itself upward and stabbed directly into Taegyu's abdomen. The moment the key pierced him, something inside Taegyu unlocked. His eyes widened as a torrent of forgotten memories tore through his mind. His life as a hunter, the brutal battles, the near-death struggles he had once lived but lost to oblivion. The deluge overwhelmed him. His knees buckled and he collapsed, leaving Jong-in and Miho frozen in shock. From the darkness, Beru murmured his astonishment, instantly grasping Suho's intention. He questioned whether Suho was truly willing to return their memories to them. Suho, resolute despite the arrow lodged in him, knew this was the only path. If hunters who had survived his father's era reclaimed their memories of that forgotten world, they might finally listen. With that conviction, he launched himself upward in a burst of shadow force, aiming next for Jong-in. Suho needed to awaken his memories as well, but before he could reach him, Jong-in reacted with the reflexes of authority and conjured a massive tornado of flame that engulfed Suho, halting his charge. Jong-in stood sternly as the inferno roared around him, lamenting Suho's recklessness, only for his eyes to flare in disbelief a heartbeat later when Suho pressed through the flames unharmed, his gaze locked unyieldingly onto him. But two more figures, Miho and Dojin, rushed in at the last second, striking Suho hard and sending him skidding backward. Blood sprayed from his mouth as he hit the ground, yet the job was already done. The ethereal key had found its target and embedded itself in Jong-in's chest. The moment it sank in, memories detonated within him. Forgotten chapters of another life surged through his mind like lightning striking his soul. His legs gave way under the weight, and he dropped to one knee, overwhelmed by the torrent of resurrected truth. Across from him, Suho sat with one hand pressed against his wound. His voice came weak but steady, knowing his part was finished. All that remained was to wait for the fallout. In stark contrast, Miho's emotions erupted, rage, fear, confusion all clashing as she lunged with a clenched fist demanding answers, but her blow never landed. Taegyu's voice sliced through the moment, halting her mid-strike. She turned sharply toward her superior, only to find him trembling, tears falling freely as the magnitude of his regained memories crushed Taegyu. It was as if an entire life he never knew he lived had suddenly returned. At the same time, Jong-in's voice broke, trembling with a truth he didn't understand. Tears welled in his eyes as he faced Suho, demanding to know what had been done to them. Suho slowly pushed himself upright. In a calm, steady tone, he told them the truth, that what they were experiencing were remnants of a world that had existed before everything was reset. Jong-in and Taegyu froze as confusion flickered in their gazes. Suho continued, explaining that the world had once been wiped clean and remade into what they knew now. This was why it had held peace for so long, until the cataclysm shattered the illusion. Realization began to dawn on Jong-in as he tried to connect the idea of a reset world to Hunter Sung Jinwoo. Suho confirmed it. His father had been the one to rewrite reality, though Suho barely knew him as a hunter. What he did know, however, was that his father had always borne every burden alone. Even now, he stood at the edge of existence itself, holding back an invasion from beyond the stars, and Suho revealed that he had been fighting those same invaders, trying to shoulder even a fraction of that impossible burden. Silence fell. Taegyu and Jong-in listened, disbelief written across their faces. The story sounded impossible, absurd even. Yet something in their newly resurfaced memories made Suho's words feel horrifyingly plausible. Then Jinchul stepped forward, his voice firm as he declared that everything Suho said was the truth. He revealed his own memories of a past life as a hunter, memories that had allowed him to rebuild the Hunter Association so swiftly after the cataclysm. His gaze swept over the group as he urged them to listen, to truly hear Suho. And so they did. What followed was a heavy, far-reaching conversation. Suho spoke openly, explaining everything he had learned, the existence of the outer gods, the apostle who walked among them today, and the stardust spread the apostle used to destabilize the world. The weight of it settled over them like a shadow. Jong-in's voice cracked first as he pieced together the implications, almost every tragedy, every anomaly that had plagued them, all threads woven by the Itarim. Taegyu's expression darkened as the same realization struck him, and a deeper pain surfaced as he understood that even Minsung's death was likely part of that same web. Just then, Jinchul's confusion finally cracked through the tension. He demanded to know why Suho had hidden this truth for so long, why he had not stepped forward sooner. Suho's expression remained calm, though shaded with melancholy, as he explained that if the apostle discovered his existence before he was prepared, he would become his father's weakness. So, he had chosen to remain in the shadows until he could grow strong enough to stand on his own. Hearing this, both Jong-in and Taegyu stiffened as realization struck. If Suho truly was a growth-type hunter, then he too might possess the ability to level up, just like Jinwoo. Excitement sparked in Jong-in's eyes at the thought, and he seized Suho's hand with an eager smile, telling him that his mother, Hai-in, had once been a member of his guild. The mention of her name lit up Suho's expression, awe softening his features as he absorbed the unexpected connection. Nearby, Dojin quietly observed, his mind racing. The hunters now understood Suho's mission. Worse, they were aligning themselves with him, something he had not anticipated. Suho's increasing influence made him a key figure in the coming war, and Dojin knew he could no longer allow Suho to act unchecked. Breaking the silence, Beck addressed the group, urging them to move forward if the misunderstanding had cleared. Yet doubt lingered in his eyes, uncertainty clouding his thoughts over everything he had just witnessed. Suho met that uncertainty with composure and offered to restore the memories of the others as well. Without hesitation, he summoned the ominous dark key once more and drove it into Beck's chest. The moment it pierced him, shadows surged outward, wrapping around both. Power throbbed through the air as the connection flared to life, and soon Beck began trembling as waves of forgotten memories surged back into him. Tears streamed down his face, yet a bittersweet smile formed as he felt the warmth of a past he never knew he'd lost. From afar, Dojin watched, anxiety coiling tighter in his chest. He knew nothing of the world reset, and as a being not born of this world, he understood the key Suho wielded would never respond to him. The realization unsettled him. If such a truth ever came to light, suspicion would fall on him instantly, something he couldn't afford right now. With that fear gnawing at him, Dojin began weighing his options to slip out of the situation unnoticed. Then something unexpected occurred. When Suho attempted the key on Miho, nothing happened. She stood there bewildered as no memories surfaced, no surge of power awakened. Suho too was momentarily taken aback. Beru emerged from the shadows beside him, offering an explanation. Just like Miho, others might also be incapable of recovering memories simply because they had never been part of the old world to begin with. The past world, Beru explained, had existed 20 years ago in this same timeline, back when mana still flowed. But once peace returned, mana vanished entirely. With that shift, differences naturally emerged, and Miho, he reasoned, had simply not been born in that previous version of the world at all. The revelation struck Suho deeply. To confirm it further, he turned toward Dojin and inserted the key once more, attempting to awaken whatever might lie buried. But again, nothing happened. Dojin met the result calmly, showing no hint of surprise as he admitted that no memory surfaced for him either. Suho's brows knit together as he concluded that Dojin, too, had not existed in the reset world. For Dojin, the confirmation brought a wave of relief. He stepped back quietly and slipped out of focus, distancing himself from the unfolding truth. Shortly after, Jinchul approached Suho, his voice steady with conviction as he reminded him that this peace, the calm world they now inhabited, was the outcome of Jinwoo's final decision. Countless lives that would never have existed in the old world had been given a chance because of that choice. The weight of those words settled over Suho. As his gaze drifted across the hunters around him, he felt the truth of it. This was what his father had wanted, a world where lives once erased could breathe again. After a silent moment, Suho's voice rose once more, drawing everyone's attention. He stated plainly that if the outer gods descended now, humanity would stand no chance of surviving. Resolve hardened his tone as he called upon those gathered to lend him their strength to protect the fragile peace of this world, just as his father had once done. Later that day, news of the Jisun prison break flooded every television and news feed across the nation. The incident that had thrown the country into turmoil was finally brought under control, thanks to the swift response of the Hunters Association. Yet what seized the nation's attention wasn't the escape itself. It was the appearance of mysterious black figures now publicly linked to Suho. Overnight, he became the country's newest symbol of courage, a young man who had risked his life in the darkest moment and reawakened as a hunter. Somewhere far away, a man sat watching the broadcast intently. It was S-rank hunter Hwang Dong-soo, his face twisting with fury the moment the word hero was spoken. Bloodlust burned through his eyes as he muttered that he would be coming for Suho very soon. Back at the Hunter Association, the same broadcast flickered across a screen in a closed room where Suho frowned in disbelief at the narrative of him being a reawakener. Jinchul answered him calmly, admitting that the association had crafted the story themselves and sent it to the press. Reawakening was rare, but believable. In contrast, revealing the truth about a leveling hunter would plunge the world into chaos. People would not see him as a protector, they would see him as an anomaly, a threat that defied the natural order. As harsh as the reasoning was, Suho understood the necessity. Jong-in spoke next, quietly recalling the 3 objectives Suho had once laid out, 3 pillars that would determine the fate of the coming war. First was his own growth, to reach a strength capable of standing beside his father. Second was assembling hunters strong enough to resist the outer gods and mobilizing the world's forces. And third was defeating the apostle who freely walked among them. After reminding him of these goals, Jong-in added that if Suho truly intended to rally the power of this world, passion alone would not carry him. It would require careful strategy, the ability to move people's hearts, and the wisdom to guide them in the right direction. Hearing this, Suho silently acknowledged the truth of it. He lacked the means to accomplish those goals alone. He would need help, guidance, and the strength of others. And the very fact that Jong-in spoke with such conviction meant only one thing. They intended to support him. His instincts were confirmed when Baek rose from his seat and pledged the White Tiger Guild to Suho. Jong-in followed, offering the Hunter Guild's backing without hesitation. Chairman Jinchul, watching the alliances shift, felt a wave of relief. Suho had already gained 2 crucial supporters, but one remained, Lim Taegyu. All eyes turned toward him as he sat with arms crossed, expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. He demanded to know whether Suho had killed Lee Min-sung. Baek bristled at the harsh accusation, but Suho met the question head-on, admitting plainly that he had indeed killed the A-rank hunter. He continued, explaining the circumstances. Min-sung had been corrupted by stardust and was under the apostle's influence. Suho insisted he had never intended to kill him. He had confronted Min-sung only to seek information. Taegyu listened with a heavy calm. Part of him had already known Suho hadn't acted in malice, yet something still held him back, something he needed to understand. Suho sensed it and broke the silence, guessing that Taegyu wanted to know about Min-sung's final moments. The accuracy of that guess startled the S-rank, so Suho recounted what he had seen, that Min-sung had smiled at the end. The man had laughed, though Suho could not say whether it was cruel satisfaction or hollow resignation. What he knew for certain was that despite everything, Min-sung had not lost himself, not even in his last breath. Taegyu exhaled a long, strained sigh, a blend of scorn, grief, and reluctant acceptance, and after a quiet pause, he announced with finality that the Reaper Guild would join the effort. With that, Suho had secured the support of 3 of the nation's greatest guilds. Jinchul watched the young hunter, noticing a familiar spark in his eyes. something reminiscent of the fierce unity that once rallied hunters behind Jinwoo himself. The realization brought Jinchul both anticipation and unease, as he wondered what kind of storm Suho's choices would soon unleash upon the Hunter Association. That's it for the second episode of Solo Leveling Ragnarok Season 2. Stay tuned. More episodes are on the way. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss episode 3 when it drops. I'll see you soon with a brand new chapter.